Hi, I'm Paul from the Studio Rats. Now, we've had a couple of requests on Facebook and Instagram for a tour of our studio. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a brief tour of my studio, and hopefully James and Dan are going to do the same in the future. So here we go. Okay, over here is where I record vocals. Now, I record vocals in the same room as where I mix. Now, in my last studio, I used to have a separate vocal booth, but I found that when I was in that studio, there was a bit of a disconnection between myself and the vocalist that I was recording. So I much prefer now to have the vocalist with me in the same room, as we can interact a lot more freely. Now, over here I've got some of the albums that me and DWB have worked on in the past. So these ones here are a few Korean and Japanese ones, and this one here is a band called Arashi. Now, in 2011 we did this, and in 2011 it sold 900,000 copies, so now it's about 2 million. Right, here's all my guitars. So first of all, I've got a Gibson Custom Shop 9060 Les Paul. There's a PRS Custom 22. Now, with these guitars, with the PRS and the Gibson, I tend to use these for mainly the rock sort of stuff. I use these guitars probably the least out of all my guitars. Now, here's my Gretsch. This is a Brian Setzer Hot Rod. I love this guitar. It's got a Bigsby tremolo on it, and I love Bigsbys. I just find that if I'm doing anything that needs sort of ambient guitar and it needs that vibrato, a Bigsby just is the ultimate tremolo to do that sort of stuff with. Okay, next is my Fender Custom Shop 1962 Strat. As you can see, this is a heavy relic and it's quite beaten up. I love heavily beaten up guitars. This is a Custom Shop 1952 Telecaster in shell pink, probably my number one guitar. It is so light and it's so resonant and sounds amazing. This is a 62 Tele Custom Shop, just a normal relic, not a heavy relic. And this guitar here is a Custom Shop 59 Esquire. Now, if you look down here, you see it's got a pickup. Now, the 59 Esquires, or the Esquires, don't normally come with a pickup, but I had this fitted a few months ago and it's great. It's really zingy sounding guitar. Now, last of all, I've got my only bass, which I actually bought off Dan. He probably ripped me off. It's only a Mexican jazz bass, but it does me for any bass stuff that I need. And if I need anything that's a bit more serious, I'll always get Dan from the Studio Rats to do that on whatever project I'm working on. Okay, let's have a quick look at the amplifiers. So the top here I've got a Kemper, and let's have a look at, oh yeah, that's the Rev D20, so that's my newest one. You can actually see the size difference between that and other amplifiers. Next is a divided by 13 RSA 23 and a Mesa Boogie single rectifier. Now that obviously gets used for all the rock stuff. So the speaker that I use, I've got a divided by 13 2x12, and this is a really fantastic sounding cabinet. So my normal go-to amplifier is here. This is the Dr. Z Maz 38. I love this amp. It's like an AC30. Now, all my amplifiers are going, apart from the Dr. Z Maz, are going into the Universal Audio Aux box, which then goes into my DAW. Now, the Maz is actually going straight into the 2 Notes Torpedo Studio, which is this thing here. Now, I tend to find that the Maz blows valves if it's going into anything else, and it's quite a sensitive amp. I don't know if it's just my one, but I love this amp. It sounds so good, so it constantly goes into the 2 notes where it seems to be stable. Now, all of my amplifiers are going through this Cajon amp switcher here, so I can basically choose what amp and what speaker I want things to come through. Okay, so this is my workstation, and over here is a client that, or the head of a client that didn't pay once. So I used to have quite a lot of outboard gear that I used to use, like compressors and EQs and preamps, but I've scaled that back over the last couple of years, as I now tend to prefer to mix mainly in the box with just using a couple of bits of outboard if I need it. But what I do still use is, I've still got this compressor that I use down here, which is a Wes Audio B76, which is an 1176 style compressor, and you can choose between the blue stripe and the more modern blackface stuff just by pushing that modern and vintage button there. And the only other outboard that I've got that I use now is over here, which is a Crane Song Falcon compressor, a Marg Pre-Q4, which is my favourite preamp, and the one next to it is a Phoenix Audio preamp, which is more like a Neve style preamp, so it's got a bit more vibe to it. Now everything then comes out of my Universal Audio Apollos and they go into this Trinov Audio ST2 Pro. Now what this does, this is my room correction. So even though I have got treatment in my studio, this thing sorts out all of the phase problems, and if there's any sort of funny frequencies that are bouncing around, it sorts it all out just so I know that what I'm hearing through my speakers is what I'm supposed to be hearing. Okay, computer wise, I use an Apple iMac Pro. Now this is my main computer in the studio. I have got a little mobile rig, but the reason I got this was because I got rid of my Pro Tools HDX system and I really wanted to get a computer that could handle anything that I could throw at it. And so far it's never let me down, and it can handle, I mean, I've had projects where I've had say 200 tracks and it's never even faltered and it's hardly even showing up on the performance meter, so I'm pretty chuffed with that. Right, I've got one of these. This is a Presonus Atom. This was sent to me a couple of weeks ago by Presonus because I was over to New York. It's brilliant. This here is a soft tube console 1. I use this as probably my main plugin in my DAW, which is Studio One. Now over here is a fader port. I just use that for little motorized fader stuff, and my transport works really, really well. So while I was over in New York, I spoke to Softtube, and Softtube had just come out with the fader pack for Console 1, so I'm definitely going to be getting one of them. Now over here, the interfaces that I use, I've got an Apollo 8 and an Apollo X6. Now the X6 is an updated version of the 8. It's got better converters in it. So here I've got 10 cores worth of Universal Audio processing. And around the back of the computer, I think I've got another 18 cores in a chassis. So I can use, you know, basically endless UAD plugins in my mixes, which I'm pretty chuffed about. Now the monitors that I use at the moment are these Amphion 118s. Now I love these speakers, they're great, although a few weeks ago I managed to try out a pair of Key Audio speakers, so I'm thinking about swapping them out, swapping the Amphions out for a pair of Keys, but we'll see how that goes. Now you might have seen this in some of my videos. This is a Fender Rhodes Mark 1. This is a 1977. I love this. It's been kept in really great condition by a good friend of mine, and I bought it off him a few years ago. And here is my Novation MIDI controller as well, which goes into the computer. So I hope you guys got something out of that. Now please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.